Are you planning a trip to Banff or Jasper with kids and trying to figure out what is actually worth doing? Because family trips to the Canadian Rockies can look really different. One family might need lots of playgrounds, stroller friendly walks, picnic spots, and a hotel with a pool. Another family might be looking for rafting, canyon walks, mountain coasters, big hikes, gondolas, and every adventure they can possibly fit in. And a lot of families are somewhere in the middle. So, this episode, I'm going to walk you through how Banff and Jasper work for different kinds of families, from toddlers to teenagers. We'll talk about easy wins, playground stops, big mountain experiences, adventurous activities, Jasper add ons, and how I'd plan a family trip through Banff, Canmore, Yoho, the Icefields Parkway, and Jasper. Welcome back to the Banff Travel Podcast. I'm your host, Celine Brewer, and this episode is a fun one for me because I'm not just talking as a Banff travel planner, I'm talking as a local parent. My kids are 10 and 12, and we are definitely not a sit-still family. We hike, bike, paddle, ski, and plan most of our trips around getting outside. We've done whitewater rafting in Iceland, canyoning in Costa Rica, hiked Machu Picchu together, and cycled through parts of Europe as a family. So when I talk about family adventure in Banff, I really mean it. But I also know that every family is different. Some kids can hike for hours, some need a playground and a pool at the end of the day, some families want easy sightseeing and beautiful views without big hikes. Others have teenagers who will be way more excited about rafting, canyoning, or a mountain coaster than another scenic viewpoint. And that's why I want to approach this episode a little differently. I'm not just going to list every family-friendly thing to do in Banff. I want to help you think through what actually fits your family, how to match the trip to your kids' ages and energy levels, and how to avoid planning a trip that sounds great but feels exhausting. Everything I cover today fits perfectly with the kind of planning help I offer inside my Banff and Jasper travel planning hub. You'll find my guides, ready-made itineraries, planning resources, and access to live Q&A sessions. I'm also working on adding a family-specific Banff and Jasper itinerary because I know families need more than a list of things to do. You need to know what fits together, what to book ahead, and where to build in those breaks. All right, let's start talking about visiting Banff and Jasper and the surrounding area with kids. The first thing I want to say is this. There is no one perfect itinerary for families. A family traveling with a baby is going to plan very differently than a family with 3 teenagers. A family that hikes every weekend is going to have a different trip than a family where the kids are happiest with short walks, ice cream, and a hotel pool. And then again, a multi-generational family with grandparents, parents, and kids needs a completely different plan. That's why I think the best way to plan with kids is to start by asking, what kind of family trip are we trying to have? Are you looking for an easy sightseeing trip with beautiful views and minimal hiking? Are you looking for a big adventure trip with rafting and biking and canoeing and hiking? Are you trying to keep toddlers happy while still getting in those iconic Banff moments? I remember clearly the days traveling with toddlers. Are you planning for teenagers who need activities that feel exciting enough to actually impress them? Banff can work for all those trips, but you need to plan it differently. Now, the mistake I see a lot of families making, and honestly, it's a mistake we all make, is just trying to do everything. They want to visit Lake Louise, Marine Lake, Johnston Canyon, the Banff Gondola, do big hiking, canoe rentals, scenic drives, restaurants, boat cruises, all packed in to a couple of days. And obviously, this is where Banff is going to start to feel stressful. The goal is not to do everything. The goal is to choose the right experiences for your family and leave enough space that everyone still enjoys the trip. Doing things together as a family is the real focus, not seeing absolutely everything. I do a lot of travel consultations for families, and one of my favorites was a family who very specifically told me they didn't need to see everything. They really just wanted to spend time on adventures as a family. And to be honest, the best memories often come from those experiences together. Spending time together talking on a long hike or a fun bike ride, not from rushing place to place, spending the day driving, hopping in and out of the car, and keeping everyone exhausted. Now, let's start with babies and toddlers because I do get this question a lot. What can we actually do in Banff with a baby or a toddler? And is Banff worth it? And my answer is yes, Absolutely. You just need to set the right expectations. You're not going to be moving as fast. You're probably not going to see as many things in a day. And you need to build your itinerary around snacks, naps, bathrooms, layers, and places where little kids can just move around. I have traveled with our kids since they were babies, and I know what that toddler stage is. I know what it's like to travel with a baby. You do need to set time aside for just giving them time to move and quiet times away from people. Now, one thing that I think is really important to know is that I wouldn't consider Banff and the surrounding area overly stroller friendly. While there are definitely places you can take a stroller, there are plenty of places where you'll find it much easier to use a baby or toddler carrier. If you don't currently use one, leading up to the trip is a wonderful time to start getting your baby or toddler used to a carrier. My general rule would be, bring a stroller for town, paved paths, and just generally walking around. But bring a carrier if you want to do places like Moraine Lake, Johnston Canyon, and even some of the lake trails. Now, the Bow River Trails right in the town of Banff is one of my favorite easy options. It's flat and wide, scenic, and very manageable with a stroller. You get mountain views, river views, and you can connect it with a visit to town, Central Park, Bow Falls, or a picnic. Just know that to get to Bow Falls involves a large set of stairs, so be prepared for that. You're either going to be carrying the stroller up, or even better would be to use a carrier. Cascade Ponds is a great one to keep in your back pocket for families with younger kids. Clearly not a big attraction the same way as Lake Louise or Moraine Lake, but it's absolutely beautiful. There's space to picnic, space for kids to move around, and beautiful mountain scenery all around. The Banff Gondola is an excellent option for families with kids of all ages, really, but even younger kids. You can get those huge views without needing to hike to them. At the top, you have the boardwalk, interpretive center, which is great for kids, and enough to do to make it feel like an experience. So you can walk out on the boardwalks. Just know that strollers are not recommended. So again, this is when that baby or toddler carrier is really going to come in handy. The boardwalks at the top of the Banff Gondola have a whole bunch of stairs. So it's just going to make your life a lot easier to carry your baby or toddler. The Lake Louise Lakeshore Trail is wide and flat and manageable with a stroller. Now, Moraine Lake is going to be much more difficult with a stroller. The rock pile is a series of steps, and even the Lakeshore Trail is much narrower and filled with roots and rocks. Again, I recommend a carrier for your visit here. In Yoho National Park, you can easily visit Takaka Falls, Natural Bridge, and Emerald Lake. You can use a stroller at both Takaka Falls and Emerald Lake, at least for a part of the lakeshore walk at Emerald Lake. And if the weather turns and you need a few indoor options, you can take kids to places like the Banff Park Museum. They'll enjoy the wildlife displays. The Cave and Basin is another good one. It has the history on the inside, the Banff Springs snail, boardwalks, shore walking areas, and enough variety to keep kids interested. Now, if you are traveling with babies or toddlers, you can always check rental options for baby hiking carriers, strollers, bike trailers in Banff or Canmore. That way you don't have to fly with every piece of gear you own. And it's always worth checking with your hotel if you need a travel crib or any extra setup in your room. Okay, so now I want to talk about something that doesn't always make it into, all of the Banff itineraries out there, but absolutely should be in your itinerary if you're traveling with kids, and that's playgrounds. Because we all know sometimes kids just need to play. Whether it's a playground, a pool, or a picnic spot where kids can run around and nobody has to sit still. It's also great for the end of the day when you're done with your outdoor adventures, giving them the opportunity to just go and be kids. Now, in Banff, the adventure playground at the Sundance Park area is one of the best stops for families. It's a fairly new playground and kids love it. It's close to town, it's close to the river. You can easily pair it with a slower afternoon, or you can grab a coffee and walk along the Bow River to it and let the kids play. Central Park in Banff is also great. It has a small play area, but it's worth a stop if you're wandering around town. It's a perfect stop to help break up your town site afternoon or heading up to Cascade of Time Gardens, any of those things. The village of Lake Louise also has a really great playground in it. And then there's Canmore. I know a lot of visitors focus on only Banff, but Canmore can be a really good family base. You often get more space for the money, condo style accommodations, still plenty of restaurants, and beautiful walking paths. Canmore also has excellent playgrounds. Centennial Park is a great central option if you're spending time downtown. The West Canmore Park is the perfect scenic walk and playground combo. There are also playgrounds tucked into different neighborhoods with big mountain views. And you know what? Sometimes this is exactly what families need after that full day of exploring. And then there's Elevation Place. So this is one of the best rainy day or rest day options in Canmore. It has an indoor pool, water slide, climbing wall, library, cafe. If kids just need a break from sightseeing or the weather's not cooperating, this can be a very useful backup plan, especially if your hotel doesn't have a pool. And this is also why hotels with pools are such an excellent choice. As adults, sometimes we think of the hotel as, you know what, we're just going to sleep there. We're not going to spend any time there. But for kids, that pool can be the highlight of their trip. After the big day at Lake Louise or hiking Johnston Canyon or driving the Icefields Parkway, a pool can be exactly what everyone needs at the end of the day. Now, let's talk about some of the other, big mountain experiences. Things that work for almost every family. They give you those wow moments and they don't always require a big hike. The Banff Gondola, I've already talked about it, is the easiest example. You ride up Sulphur Mountain, get those huge views over Banff, the Bow Valley, surrounding peaks. There's the boardwalks at the top, the interpretive center, and restaurants. Kids love it. The Lake Louise Gondola is another great family option. Now, at Lake Louise, you have the option between an open air chairlift and the gondola. My kids love the open air chairlift. I do as well, especially on a nice day. It gives you views back towards Lake Louise and the Victoria Glacier. It's also known for the possibility of wildlife viewing opportunities from the chairlift. And then there's a short walk down to the interpretive center that the kids will really enjoy. Obviously, for kids, riding that chairlift is probably going to be the most fun part. One of my favorites, Sunshine Meadows. I love it. My kids love it. They're always happy to go there. It's especially good if you want some alpine scenery without a huge hike. So you take the gondola, enclosed gondola, but then it's followed with a chairlift up to the Standish viewpoint. Suddenly you're in this beautiful high alpine area with lakes and views and meadows. And you know what? You can do an easy hike down to the gondola or even longer depending on your kids. So it's really a great option for so many families. And then of course we have the boat cruises, Lake Minnewanka cruise or the Maligne Lake cruise in Jasper. You're out on the water, everybody gets those mountain views. Your kids don't have to hike, so it's something to experience, something memorable that doesn't take a lot of effort. If you have kids under 12, you can look for the Junior Explorer cruise for the Lake Minnewanka. That includes games and just fun for the kids. And as we're talking about water activities, there's the option for canoeing on Lake Louise, Moraine Lake, Emerald Lake, or even from the Banff Canoe Club. You can canoe up in Jasper as well, Maligne Lake or Pyramid Lake. And those can be one of those really fun experiences that your kids are going to remember. Obviously, it's expensive at the iconic lakes, so this is where you need to decide if it fits in your budget and also can get lined up. But again, being out on that turquoise water does feel different than seeing it from shore. As I mentioned, the Banff Canoe Club is a nice option because it's right in town and it feels a little more relaxed. It's also a little bit easier on your wallet. Now let's get into the activities that I think a lot of families are actually looking for. Because yes, plenty of families come to Banff wanting easy walks and scenic drives, but I also talk to a lot of families who want adventure. They want the trip their kids will talk about later. They want the rafting, the canyon trails, biking, climbing, paddling, and something that just feels different. Now this one is still easy, but Johnston Canyon is one of the best family-friendly easy hikes in Banff. The trail follows the canyon on the catwalks and the pathways with waterfalls along the way. The lower falls are the easiest goal. Your kids will love climbing through the cave there, getting closer to the waterfall, and then you can continue up to the upper falls. Now, this one does get very, very busy, so I would do it earlier in the morning or later in the day. Take advantage of the fact that your kids are probably going to be up earlier than most other people. This is one that it doesn't matter if my kids say they don't want to go on a hike. If I say Johnston Canyon, they'll always be up for it. They just enjoy it. Sundance Canyon is another really great option, especially if you want something that, is a little bit longer and is still very interesting. So the first section from the cave and basin is easier, more open, and then you have a canyon loop that feels much more rugged at the end. It's not the same dramatic catwalk experience as Johnston Canyon, but it's such a great family adventure and it's right from the Banff town site. Now, I highly recommend riding bikes because the first 4 kilometers is a paved trail. So you can ride bikes, park them, and then hike the 2-kilometer Sundance Canyon and then bike back. It's a really fun bike and hike you can do with the kids. Now, just know that Sundance Canyon has been closed for some repairs, so you'll want to check trail conditions to see if it is open. Whitewater rafting is also a big one for families. Now, I won't say that it's my favorite activity, but my kids are always super excited to do it. And so, I suck it up and go along with them. And you know what? In the end, I always have the best time. We've done it in Peru. We've done it in Slovenia. We've even done it in Iceland. So it's well worth adding to your itinerary. For younger kids or families who want something calm or a little bit easier, you have 2 options. You can just do a scenic float on the Bow River, or there are definitely options for class 1, class 2 whitewater rafting that even young kids can do. For families with older kids or teenagers, the Kicking Horse River is one to look at. That's going to be more challenging. Class 3, maybe even up to a class 4, depending on the water flow and the parts of the river that you go on. So all of these types of options are available either in Kananaskis or even the Kicking Horse River, as I mentioned, out towards Golden. You should always check age and weight minimums because they will vary based on the operator or what river section they're going to go on. But just know that those options are there. Another really fun adventure for families is canyoning, especially if you have older kids or teens. We've done canyoning as a family both here and in Costa Rica and in France and in Austria. And it's one of those activities that my kids still remember and still talk about. And it's just such a fun adventure. And one thing I love about these activities like canyoning or whitewater rafting is that you still get all of those scenic mountain views. You still have that feeling like you're out in the mountains all day, but you just have way less people around you. The Via Ferrata at Mount Norquay is a great teenager activity or for any kids who are 12 and over and who meet the minimum weight requirements. You're clipped into a cable system climbing along a mountain route with a guide. This may not be for every family, but for those of you who are super adventurous, you're going to love it. Cycling is another obvious family favorite. The Bow Valley Parkway is especially fun in the spring and the fall when that one section is closed to vehicles. That gives families a chance to bike a scenic mountain road without all the regular traffic. You can keep it shorter. You can use e-bikes if your kids are old enough. You can even do it with babies and toddlers. You can get a bike trailer behind. You can make it a bigger day if your family is strong on bikes. So it's a really great option to just spend time together exploring the mountain scenery. The Legacy Trail, which is the paved pathway that runs between Banff and Canmore, is another great option for a bike ride out. Now, this is one where I'm going to caution you and say just make sure everyone is staying on their side of the path. Don't stop in the middle of the pathway. Everybody is wearing helmets because it does get busy. When I do this one with my kids, I tend to try to do it before peak season and earlier in the morning. There are a lot of tourists on it. There's a lot of road riders on it. There's a lot of people who aren't wearing helmets. It can just feel like a lot on a really, really busy day. And just a little insider tip for you on the Legacy Trail, it's actually an easier ride from Banff to Canmore than it is from Canmore to Banff. Now, for you families who want to hike, you literally have so many options. If you don't hike often, you might look at easier hikes. Johnson Lake is a really great hike. Tunnel Mountain is good. Marble Canyon. You could do Lake Louise Lakeshore, but even up to Lake Agnes. I'm sure your kids can make that. For families that enjoy longer hikes, the Plain of Six Glaciers from Lake Louise, in Jasper from Moline Lake, Opal Hills is beautiful. Valley of the Five Lakes in Jasper is opening back up this year. Along the Icefields Parkway, Wilcox Pass, Parker Ridge, even Helen Lake is great. The key is really just matching the hike to your family and not just choosing the most famous one. All right, one other thing I want to talk about is the Golden Skybridge, because this can be a really fun addition for families, especially if you're looking for, we just want to do something for the kids, something that the kids are just going to enjoy. We do that a lot when we're traveling. We know that, we push our agenda a lot on the kids, on the things that we want to see. But every once in a while, it's nice to do something just for them, an afternoon just for them. So the Golden Skybridge is perfect for this. It's not in Banff National Park, so if you have a really short trip, you might not want to add it. But if you're already planning, say, a morning in Yoho National Park, you're just going to go see Emerald Lake, maybe canoe, and wondering what to do with your afternoon, you're really not that far away from going to Golden. And the Golden Skybridge is really great. You have, obviously, the suspension bridge, the mountain scenery, but then you also have adventure activities like the mountain coaster, a zip line, a giant canyon swing, and the ropes course. This is the ideal place for an afternoon for just fun for everyone. Okay, so let's talk about Jasper now, because I do think Jasper deserves a place in a family trip if you have enough time. And I've mentioned a few things here or there about Jasper. Banff obviously has those famous icons, right? Like Lake Louise, Moraine Lake, the Banff Gondola, Johnston Canyon, all of the things you've heard about. Jasper is going to feel different. It's more spread out, it's quieter, but it still has incredible wildlife, lakes, waterfalls, and mountain scenery. It's going to be a really nice change of pace after Banff. So just one important note, because I've seen this come up on a few people's itineraries already this year, Moline Canyon is still closed. So I wouldn't plan on building that into one of your Jasper days. It's typically one of the obvious family recommendations, but it won't be for this year. I've seen no indication on when they expect it to open. For big views in Jasper, the Jasper Sky Tram is a great option. You can ride up, enjoy the views, and if your family loves to hike, I would continue hiking to Whistler Summit. It's not that far, it's not that hard, but the views are stunning. For more lakes, right outside the town of Jasper, you have Lake Annette, Lake Edith, and Lac Beauvert. So lots of options right there that you could even do things like canoeing on. And then again, not too much further, Pyramid Lake and Patricia Lake. You have some hiking up there, canoeing, close to town, super scenic. Pyramid Island is really nice for a short walk and some pictures. We've already talked about boat cruises, but the Moline Lake cruise, also well worth doing. Scenery, stunning. You have the chance to spot wildlife along the way. And there's also some really great hikes from the lake. You can do the easier Mary Schaefer Loop, Moose Lake, or for families looking for bigger hikes, Opal Hills is so pretty. It's very, very steep at the beginning, but doable and really quite beautiful. And then Bald Hills is there as well. Other hikes that are well worth doing, Old Fort Point, Valley of the Five Lakes, which I already mentioned, are great for active families. As you drive the Icefields Parkway, you'll have the opportunity to get on the glacier, either, the Ice Explorer, the kids will enjoy the ride on the giant trucks, or do a guided ice hike for those of you who are more adventurous. Plus, you'll have plenty of stops to make along the way, and some of those hikes that I already talked about, Parker Ridge, well worth doing. Wilcox Pass, even if you just go for the views up by the Red Chairs, or Helen Lake. Beauty Creek to Stanley Falls is another great one with kids. Okay, so I did what I said I wasn't going to do. I've thrown out a whole bunch of ideas, many of which you've probably heard before and already have in your notes. So let's talk about how this could actually come together as a family trip. This isn't going to be a full detailed itinerary, but if I were thinking about a 7-day Banff and Jasper family trip, this is roughly how I'd start thinking about it. So day 1 would be your arrival day. You don't want to overplan this. Get to Banff or Canmore, check into your hotel, go pick up some groceries, grab some breakfast for the next few days or some snacks, and do something easy. If you're staying in Canmore, maybe that's just walking down Main Street, maybe the Bow River trails, an easy walk like Policeman's Creek, or if you have the time, fit in a hike up to Grassy Lakes. It's not that long, it's not that hard. If you're staying in Banff, you could, again, walk along the Bow River. You could let kids burn energy off at a playground. You could even hike up Tunnel Mountain if you wanted to. Now, day 2, I would probably hang around the town of Banff. Do something like check out the viewpoints, Bow Falls, Surprise Corner, Vermilion Lakes, go up the Banff Gondola, maybe come back for lunch, spend some time at the Sundance Park Adventure Playground. If your kids are older, if you didn't hike Tunnel Mountain the day before, that morning would be a great time for it. You could also add a canoe at the Banff Canoe Club or rent bikes and ride out to Sundance Canyon in the afternoon. Day 3 could be your Lake Louise and Moraine Lake Day. Now, this is one of those days that you need to have a plan because you need to think about shuttles and crowds and what you actually want to do at each lake. With younger kids, you might keep it to the lakeshore walks, the rock pile at Moraine Lake, snacks, photos, maybe canoeing if it fits your budget and the lineups aren't too long. With older kids, you might add a nice big hike, maybe Lake Agnes Tea House with the little beehive attached to it, maybe Plain of Six Glaciers. And, just check out Moraine Lake, rock pile, and the lakeshore there. If you're taking Parks Canada shuttle or another one that's right at the ski resort, another option is to also check out that gondola while you're right there. Day 4 could be Johnston Canyon, Bow Valley Parkway, or an adventure day. So this is where you choose your family style. And one family might do Johnston Canyon early, and then maybe in the afternoon, go check out the Lake Minnewanka area. Have a picnic, maybe a little slower afternoon, checking those lakes out, doing a Lake Minnewanka boat cruise, maybe the easy hike at Johnson Lake, which is great for a picnic and a short little hike. Now, if you're a very active family, maybe you're biking all or part of the Bow Valley Parkway, if that seasonal closure is still in place. Or maybe you're more adventurous and you want to go for a day of rafting or canyoning or some other fun guided activity. Day 5 could be your Yoho National Park with the option to add on the Golden Skybridge. Yoho is a great family day because you can visit Takaka Falls and then head over to Emerald Lake. You'll stop at Natural Bridge on the way and then enjoy some time at Emerald Lake, either canoeing or walking part of the Lakeshore Trail. If your kids are getting tired of scenic stops and need something more just for them, this is where the Golden Skybridge could fit in really well as that afternoon add-on and just enjoy the entire afternoon there. If the Golden Skybridge is not something you're interested in, but you still have some afternoon time, Wapta Falls is a great hike with kids as well. On day 6, you could drive up the Icefields Parkway. This will be a long day, but so worth seeing. It's one of the most scenic drives. So Bow Lake, Peyto Lake, Columbia Icefield area, Sunwapta Falls, Athabasca Falls, whatever you can fit in. Just keep in mind that the Columbia Icefield Adventure or even the Ice Walks guided hike takes about 3 hours. So you're going to need to plan your time accordingly. You want to pack food, download your maps, fill up with gas before you go. So don't expect much cell service for that drive. And then day 7 could be your Jasper day. Start out with your boat cruise at Moline Lake, look for wildlife on the way there, and then head back to town after for lunch, finish the afternoon with a scenic hike like the Valley of the Five Lakes hike or Old Fort Point, or maybe just hanging out, an easy walk around Lake Annette, maybe go up and see Pyramid Lake and Patricia Lake. And then your final day would be really just making your way back to Calgary to catch your flight, either late that day or the next morning. Now, I think having a family-specific itinerary is super helpful. As a fellow parent, having a plan is a must, but we also need flexibility. We need to know what other options are around because we know how this goes, that we have a perfectly planned out day and people aren't feeling it or things are just taking longer. So you need to know what fits together, what else is around there, what needs to be booked ahead, which days can you have some extra flexibility in there. You know what? There's going to be some days where you just say, I don't even feel like doing that. Like, if we miss it, it's fine. And that's okay. But you'll want to know where you can swap in easier or more adventurous options, just depending on how everybody's feeling on the trip. All right, let's talk briefly about where to stay with kids around Banff. So in Banff, Either right in town is fine. You can walk to restaurants. Tunnel Mountain area is also really good for families because you're close to town, but you're not right in the middle of the busiest part. Tunnel Mountain Resort, Hidden Ridge Resort are both popular with families because you can get more space, kitchens or kitchenettes, and a little bit more relaxed setting. Banff does have several hotels that do have great rooms for families. Canmore's also a great family base. As I mentioned before, you're outside the national park, but still close enough for all your day trips. You'll often get more space and easy access to restaurants, playgrounds, walking paths, grocery stores. I personally really enjoy condo style properties because you can have breakfast before you head out, maybe do some laundry if you need to, and everybody can spread out a little and even have their own sleeping spaces. For families, I think it's really important just to think about what makes traveling easiest for you. Do you want to be able to walk to restaurants? Do you want a kitchen? Do your kids need a pool? Would you be happier with more space or everybody having their own bedrooms? Those things matter. Now, I do have some family-friendly hotel recommendations for both Banff and Canmore, which I'll include in the show notes. Now, what about where to eat in Banff with kids? I would say in general, Banff and Canmore are very family-friendly for the restaurants. Now, not every single meal needs to be planned out, but in Banff, in peak summer season or over a long weekend, it really does help to have a bit of a plan. Banff does have some great restaurants, but it's also a busy mountain town. Restaurants will fill up quickly, and after a big day of hiking or sightseeing, with kids, the last thing you want to do is be wandering up and down Banff Ave trying to find a table at 6:30 p.m. So my biggest tip is to plan your dinners ahead, especially for the nights when you know you'll be in town. And not every meal needs to be fancy. Sometimes with kids, it just needs to be functional. We just need to get some food in them. So, you can choose some casual, easy places. A few family-friendly options in Banff could be even like Old Spaghetti Factory, Bear Street Tavern, Farm and Fire, Three Bears. We all really like Magpie and Stump. The Eddie Burger and Bar is really great. Even Boston Pizza, if you just need something easy, sandwiches, pizza, easy things with kids. Now, those are not necessarily the only places to eat with kids, but they're the kind of restaurants where you're more likely to find food that just works for a range of appetites. We all know that some kids are just picky and sometimes we just need easy places. For breakfast or lunch, I'd also think about grab and go options and some groceries for breakfast. I know that doesn't sound exciting, but having breakfast food, fruit, granola bars, sandwiches, easy picnic supplies can just make your trip so much smoother. You can avoid having to eat out 3 meals a day, which can take up a lot of time. And then if you're packing lunches, you can just eat when everybody's hungry. Maybe you're just on the middle of your hike and everybody wants to eat. So there's an IGA grocery store in Banff, and Nestor's Market is another grocery option in town with a bakery and deli. There are also 3 grocery stores in Canmore. Now this is going to be especially helpful for, your longer days out like Lake Louise and Moraine Lake, or depending on what you're doing on the Icefields Parkway. Those are not days I'd want to be relying on finding a restaurant. Even if you're going to the tea house, the timing might not work. It might be really busy. So it's best to plan ahead. For Lake Louise and Moraine Lake, you can easily find pre-made sandwiches even right in the village of Lake Louise. Lagan's Bakery, or even Lake Louise Ski Resort often has some pre-made wraps or sandwiches. Of course, you want to pack more food than you think you'll need. Bring some refillable water bottles. Sometimes with the kids, I find a water bladder in the backpack is a great option because we can bring way more water without dealing with a ton of water bottles. And of course, emergency snacks in your car. The other thing I'd say is prepare for everyone to be hungry earlier. If you normally eat at 7, there's a good chance that everyone's going to be hungry at 5 o'clock. All of that activity and the fresh air. So an early dinner is also one of the easiest ways to avoid long waits and overtired kids and that evening rush. So my restaurant advice for Banff with kids is book a few casual dinners, plan some grab and go lunches for your bigger sightseeing days. Use those groceries to make your mornings and snacks easier and just keep it simple. Now, as always, I have a few more tips. First of all is book the activities that you don't want to miss out on, like gondolas, rafting, boat cruises via ferrata, popular restaurants, shuttles, some of that stuff can sell out peak season. Second, build in some breaks. Even adventurous kids need downtime, a playground stop, pool time, easy picnic. It usually works best to have one main activity for the day and then plan a few other optional activities for that day, some that may or may not happen. Third, work in hikes, but also choose hikes that are fun for the kids. For example, like Johnston Lake Trail has a hidden hermit cabin in the woods. Lower Bankhead is short, but it's still super scenic and the kids will love it. Hiking to a tea house gives the kids a fun goal with a treat waiting partway through the adventure. Fourth, plan your Lake Louise and Moraine Lake Day. If you're taking Parks Canada shuttles, just know that you're going to be waiting in lines and plan for that. That's a great time to stop for a snack while you're waiting in line. If you're taking one of the other commercial shuttles, make sure to check whether you need car seats for younger kids and what they have available. You'll also want to think beyond just the shuttle, right? You want to bring some layers. You never know when that mountain weather can change. Lots of snacks. It's always lots of snacks. Water, and, be realistic about how long your kids are going to enjoy standing around at viewpoints versus walking or canoeing or climbing the rock pile or doing a short hike. Fifth, you always want to check trail conditions and look for any wildlife warnings before heading out. And because this is the Canadian Rockies, wildlife safety matters, and especially with kids. Your kids should not be running ahead on trails, even on easy hikes. Everyone should stay together as a group. Carry bear spray if you're hiking, know how to use it. Make lots of noise on the trails. Kids are great for that. So wildlife knows you're coming. If you see wildlife, stay back. Don't let your kids approach for a photo. Remember that elk, moose, bighorn sheep also need lots of space. It's not just for bears. Please, please don't try to pose your kids with these animals. You might be laughing at me, but I see it happen every single year. Every year. And finally, pack layers every day. Like I said, that mountain weather changes quickly. You can start the mornings in jackets and want shorts and t-shirts by the afternoon. Bring rain jackets, sunscreen, hats, snacks. Plus, some extra treats are also really great for keeping kids going. And don't forget those ice cream stops. It's always worth it at the end of the day. All right, let's bring this all together. Banff and Jasper, incredible with kids. But the best family trip isn't just checking a box, right? It's the one that actually fits your family and what everybody wants to do. It might mean playground time. Just know that some of our playgrounds have some pretty incredible scenery. It's probably going to involve some gondolas, some boat cruises, some shorter walks. Maybe you get to have a lot of fun rafting, canyoning via ferrata, biking, big hikes. Or maybe it's just a mix of both and some pool time and ice cream. And if you're listening to this and thinking, okay, this is exactly the kind of trip we want, but I don't want to piece it all together myself, my Banff travel consultations are perfect for this. You'll get to talk to a fellow parent who knows which activities are the most fun for kids. I've been traveling with my kids since they were babies, so I know what it's like to travel internationally with babies, toddlers, school-age kids. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Banff Travel Podcast. If you found this helpful, make sure to follow the podcast so you don't miss the next one. And if you're planning a family trip to Banff or Jasper, I'd love to hear what kind of trip you're dreaming about. Are you a playground and gondola family, a big adventure family, or somewhere in the middle? You can head to banfftravelplanning.com/podcast, send in your questions or feedback. Until next time, happy trip planning, and I'll see you out on the trails.